All right, let's get right into it. The Indian rupee has just smashed through a huge psychological barrier, hitting 90 against the US dollar. And, it's a number that has absolutely everyone talking, from top economists all the way down to the person on the street. So today, we're going to unpack what this really means.
Here it is. This is the number that kicked everything off, 90.05. That was the closing rate for the Indian rupee against the US dollar on December 8, 2025. And believe me, it's not just a number. It's really the start of a whole new chapter for India's economy.
And this was the day it actually happened. Just a little earlier, on December 3rd, the rupee officially broke the 90 mark for the very first time. That's a historic moment, and it signals a major shift in how the currency is moving.
Which, of course, brings us to the big question. The whole reason we're doing this explainer. Is this a moment to panic? A full-on crisis? Or is there maybe a hidden opportunity here for the Indian economy? Let's break it all down.
Okay, first things first, we have to understand why this even happened. This wasn't just some random event. No, this was the result of what you could call a perfect storm of pressures coming from both inside and outside of India.
Now what's so interesting here is the breakdown. You might think this is all a domestic story, right? But look at this. A full 60% of the pressure pushing the rupee down actually came from external global factors, things well outside of India's direct control. Only 40% was from domestic stuff.
So let's look closer at these headwinds, because it's a real mix. First, you've got foreign investors pulling a massive $15 billion out of the market in just 3 months. That's huge. At the very same time, there was all this uncertainty swirling around the big trade deal with the US. Then you add global pressures hitting all Asian currencies and a very deliberate choice by India's own central bank to cut interest rates to boost growth. You see, all these things came together at once to create this powerful downward push.
Now, here's something you've got to understand. A falling currency isn't automatically bad news for everyone. Like any big economic shift, it creates a very clear set of winners and losers. So let's take a look at who falls on which side of that line.
And this really is a tale of two different experiences. So let's start with the bright side. The winners, the ones who actually benefit from a weaker rupee. Then we'll look at those who are feeling the negative financial pinch.
So who's celebrating? Well, first up, India's enormous export sector. All of a sudden, their IT services, their textiles, all of it just got a lot cheaper and way more competitive on the world stage. Who else wins? Well, any family getting money from relatives working abroad, they now get more rupees for every single dollar sent home. And for tourists, India just became a much more affordable vacation spot. And the ripple effect of all this, it could actually create 1 to 2 million new jobs in these export-focused industries. Pretty significant.
But there's always a flip side, isn't there? For the average person, things you buy that are imported, think electronics, even fuel, are going to get more expensive. For any students planning to study overseas, the cost of that education could jump by as much as 15%. And forget about cheap international vacations. Plus, any business that has to import parts or materials is going to see its own costs go way up.
So this brings us right back to our main question. To really figure out if this is a true crisis, we need to zoom out. We need to look at the history of the rupee. Has it been in a spot like this before?
This isn't the rupee's first rodeo, not by a long shot. Just look at this timeline. It's faced intense pressure before. You had the massive crisis back in 1991 that basically forced India to reform its entire economy. Then the global financial crisis in 2008. And who can forget the 2013 taper tantrum, when just the fear of the US Fed changing its policies sent shockwaves everywhere. Each time, the rupee crossed a new line, and each time, the economy found a way to adapt.
But here's the kicker. This chart shows the single biggest reason why today is completely different. Back in that 1991 crisis, India had just enough foreign currency to cover maybe 2 weeks of imports. That's it. Today, it's sitting on a massive $650 billion war chest. That's enough to cover almost a full year of imports. Honestly, that's a total game changer.
So what does that all mean at the end of the day? Well, with that much cash on hand, the central bank has the firepower to stop a complete freefall. And that strongly suggests that what we're watching isn't an out-of-control crisis, but more of a managed, market-driven adjustment. So the big question remains, what happens next? Where does the rupee go from here? Let's take a peek at what the experts are actually forecasting for the road ahead.
Okay, so the crystal ball says there are a few ways this could play out. The most likely path, what they call the base case, has about a 60% chance of happening. That's where the rupee settles down in that 88 to 91 range once trade tensions cool off. Now, there's a worse scenario where it could weaken more if there are new global shocks, but there's also a pretty good scenario where it could actually strengthen back to 88.
And that leaves us with this one last really interesting thought. Instead of seeing this as a crisis, maybe we should see it as a kind of controlled erosion, a strategic move that, yeah, it's painful for some people right now, but it could actually help make India more competitive in the long run. It could be exactly what's needed to help it reach that $5 trillion economy goal. The key, of course, is going to be navigating it skillfully.